Hey, it's Travel Gigolo, and check out this review of our Ripstop canvas tent. We've had this for a year now, so it's a long-term review. Gonna point out some of the good things about the tent, a few of the faults that we found, so stay tuned. Okay, so this roof of the tent is pretty good. It's nice to have this sort of overhang here so that if you're facing straight into the sun, especially in the afternoon, then you give it a shade going into the tent and that keeps it a bit cooler inside. It's pretty good for the rain as well. We've been in some rainy situations and we've had almost no water come into the tent. This is a really good rain stop. The unfortunate thing though is that the back of this cover goes over the rooftop vent on the tent, so you don't get as much updraft through the tent when this is on. Putting this up on your own does require a bit of effort. In particular, getting these stays to hold up while you put the ropes in is a bit difficult. So typically what I do is I put the stays in, measure where the rope should be pinned into the floor, and then pin the rope into the floor and come and put the stays back in. So one thing I think that could improve this is to have a set of spikes at the bottom so you can nail this into the ground. It doesn't have to hold up the entire roof on its own, just enough for you to go and put the ropes in and smash a peg in there. So one thing you must be aware of is that putting the cover on increases the length of the tent quite a bit, because you've got to add this on as well as the ropes into the ground. So that adds an extra, I'd say about 4 or 5 meters onto the actual length of the tent. So be careful of that when you set the tent up. The rope's not very visible at night, and that's why I put some reflectors on the ropes, because it's a bit of a tripping hazard. You know, you've got sometimes kids running up and down through the campsites and so on, and they could easily trip over that. And if you yourself come back to the tent, you're not quite thinking straight, you could easily walk into one of these ropes too. So once you've got the cover over, it covers this rooftop vent. And if you want to be a bit cautious at night, for example, and sleep with the cover over because you don't know if it's going to rain, that can make airflow through the tent a little bit difficult. Maybe a potential solution to that would be to have a couple of stays in here just to keep that away from the vent, and so you can get free airflow through that. So how has this tent been in different environments? So the main reason for getting this particular tent, a Ripstop canvas tent with a steel frame, is because of the wind. If you're camping on the west coast of South Africa or the skeleton coast of Namibia or in the desert somewhere, you get quite significant wind in the late afternoon into the early evening. Using a poly tent under these conditions is really difficult with all the flapping about it, all the noise, and also the tent doesn't stay up very well. So these steel stays are fantastic with the Ripstop tent. It's a lot easier to sleep in windy conditions with this type of tent, principally because there's much less noise. Okay, so what are some of the places that we've camped with this tent? So the west coast of South Africa and the skeleton coast of Namibia. Those are really windy conditions, and the wind is quite cold coming off the cold Atlantic Ocean. So the wind chill factor is quite significant. And I must say this tent has been fantastic under those conditions. Once you've sealed it up properly, you don't get a lot of airflow through the tent, at least not more than what you need to keep some fresh air in the tent. If the wind suddenly comes up, really simple, you just unfasten the rolls, let the roll come all the way down, and then you can zip it up from inside if it's the main door. If it's the windows though, you've got to get out of the tent, undo the clasps, let those things run down and then zip them up. But you've got to be outside the tent to do that. Also, camping on the Atlantic coast, you get quite a bit of fog and mist coming in, especially in the early hours of the morning. And the tent has worked really well under those conditions. The Ripstop canvas is almost impermeable to water. There's a couple of seams that you've got to seal, but that is par for the course with this tent, and it's in the instructions when you receive the tent. So when you're in those dry coastal conditions with the cold, strong wind coming in, you also get sometimes quite a bit of sand coming off the beach, and that has not been an issue at all with this tent. Camping in desert conditions. The thing with camping in the desert is it can get really hot in the daytime, and typically you have almost no cloud cover. Having a canvas tent like this here can get really hot. It's dark inside and there's quite a bit of heat radiating out from the canvas. So under those conditions, this tent has actually worked pretty well. Reason being that you've got quite a bit of space that you can open up to get airflow through the tent. Importantly, there is a rooftop vent, and that allows you to get some good convective airflow through the tent. So all that hot air in the tent that's rising towards the roof can then escape and be replaced by cool air coming in the sides. And that rooftop vent is one of the major reasons that we chose this tent in particular. Desert conditions, especially in the late afternoon in summer, it can get really windy. And in those circumstances, you can get fairly fine sand being entrained by the wind. In those sort of situations, you want to bring the flaps down because that fine sand can get through this mesh and it can get a bit sandy inside the tent. Other than that, this tent works really well in the desert as well. I think the only sort of drawback is that you can't see through the roof of the tent as you would with a typical poly tent, and so in the night you can't look up at the stars through the roof of the tent. But I mean, that's just one of the things that you've got to accept with getting all the advantages of having a nice sturdy tent, especially when you've got those high winds in the late afternoon. So subtropical and tropical conditions, typically in the northern parts of South Africa and in the rest of southern Africa from the Zambezi going up. The big thing there is humidity, heat and rainfall. So in terms of heat, that's not really a problem because like with desert conditions, you've got a lot of airflow through the tent. The big thing is that you can have sudden and very severe afternoon thunder showers. So those afternoon thunder showers come with sort of squalls of wind and rain and so on, and it can be pretty significant. Under those conditions, provided that you've got all the flaps down and the tent is nicely sealed, you don't have any issues. Like I've said before, one of the big things is you've got to seal the seams, and there's a wax that's provided with the tent for that purpose. So the canvas itself is pretty impermeable, but the problem is that the seams typically have very small holes through which you can get water flowing through. Once you've sealed up the seams with the wax, it's almost impermeable to water. One of the great things as well is that this section of the tent at the bottom, I'd say about the first 100 millimeters or so, is also waterproof, and it's a sort of rubberized liner. And in this case here, sometimes you position your tent in an unfortunate position. For example, it hasn't been raining, it rains for the first time, and suddenly you find that you've pitched your tent where there's a proper drainage channel through the campsite. And in that case, we have had one situation like that, and in that case this held up really well and we got almost no water into the tent. The only water we got in the tent at that point was through the seams because we hadn't yet waxed them. One of the other issues, of course, especially in the subtropical areas of southern Africa, is that it can get quite cold in the winter, typically because you're at a relatively high altitude. This applies to the desert as well, where you get a lot of radiation during the daytime, and so nighttime temperatures can be quite low. So under those circumstances, the tent is pretty good as well. The main thing is that the tent eliminates the wind chill factor. The actual tent doesn't keep out much of the cold, but it does keep in a bit of the warm air. So from that point of view, in the cold, the tent does pretty well. So what can be a little bit difficult with sealing off the tent entirely is that you don't get a lot of airflow through it. And the big issue with this here is typically in the morning, as the sun comes up, it can get really hot inside the tent. The other thing is that in a cold situation, you can get condensate on the sides of the tent from the moisture that you're breathing out. But to a large degree, you can prevent these problems by just leaving a bit of space for some airflow through the tent. Okay, so some of the things that we really like about the tent, and I think some of the difficulties as well, or things that I think could be better. To start with, the zips are really great. These are proper YKK zips and they have never failed, never got caught, no issues with that. With a lot of the tents that I've had in the past, the zips are an issue if you don't have a proper, well-built tent. So the zips work really well. Something that I don't like about this front flap is that although you've got zips down the sides, at the bottom it's Velcro. And that's fine when you're closing the tent from the outside. It's quite easy to put that Velcro down and to hold that flap down fairly securely. But when you're inside the tent at night and you want to zip this down and close that Velcro off, it's really difficult because you can't get to the Velcro. So with a bit of effort now and a bit of sort of trial and error, I figured out how to do that by from inside just folding it up against the palms of or the base of my hands. And that works. But I don't know why it's not just a zip that comes all the way down with a curve in it that you can then zip right across to the end. That way it's easily sealed, easily opened. It's really just, I think, almost a no-brainer to do it that way. So I don't understand why the Velcro was chosen for the bottom of that flap. One of the things I really like about this tent is this access hole over here. It's big enough for you to put your hand right through it, which is fantastic because you can shove stuff into the tent or you can pass things in and out of it to someone in the tent. It's also good because you can easily put your electrical cable through there with the plug top on the end and so on and so forth. With some of the other tents that I've had or some of the other tents that I've seen, there's often a little hole there for you to put your electrical cable through, which is great for electrical cable, but there's nothing else that you can get through that space. So it's nice to have a fairly large space here, and also once you put the cable through, you can zip that down all the way to the cord. So these flaps on the windows also work pretty well. It's really easy to roll them up and it's pretty easy to bring them down as well. You can just let that come all the way down and then you can zip this all the way down until that window is sealed off. The problem though is that you can't do this from inside. So if it's raining, for example, it suddenly started raining, you didn't expect that, especially when you're sleeping. Sometimes you're asleep and then the rain comes in and you've got to get up and start scurrying about and so on. You've got to come out of the tent in order to bring these zips down. So there's a couple of things that irritate me about the flap. Firstly, securing the flap if you want it out. Now, it's nice that you've got a flap that you can secure out, and there's a couple of ropes provided for that. But if you haven't positioned your tent somewhere where you've got somewhere to attach the ropes onto, then it's pretty useless. So positioning your tent in just the right place is really important if you want to use these and keep them up in the air and get some airflow through while still maintaining that shade. It would have been great if the tent by default came with a set of poles as you get for the cover and the porch that goes over the front part of the tent. The second thing that irritates me is that these ropes here are loose and there's nowhere to attach them on the tent itself. So when it's time to roll up the window, for example, then you've got to figure out a way to keep these rolls out of the way and or to put these inside and so on and so forth. And it would just be a lot easier if there was something here that you could just attach the ropes to and then roll that up. Also, at night, if you haven't rolled these up and tied them onto themselves and it gets windy, then these things tend to flap about against the side of the tent, which is not cool. I really wish there's just a simple way to, a simple addition onto the tent where you could just attach these and have them nice and secure. So typically what I do is roll them up as much as I can and just tie them down a little bit and then put them inside the flap as I roll the flap up towards the top and put the clasps on. And that works pretty well, but it's not the simplest thing to do. It's quite nice inside the tent. It can be quite light. You've got quite a bit of light streaming in through the windows once those canvas flaps on the outside are all up, so that's pretty cool. Really love this rooftop vent here because you get all that hot air that goes out through there. There's also a bit of light that comes in through here as well. One of the other important things as to why I chose this tent in particular is that there's quite a bit of height in the tent. So the tent's about, I think, 2 meters high in total. I can't remember the exact dimensions, and I'm 175, so there's quite a bit of headroom here. I can stand up completely, I can change clothes, move around, do stuff without having to be hunched over all the time. So this is really nice. There's some nice little places inside the tent to attach string, for example, or cable. So if you want to hang your clothes in the tent, for example, if you're going somewhere you want to leave your wet clothes in the tent drying, you can do that. Just string them up, close the tent off and go off on your way. The other thing, of course, is that if it's raining and you need to try and get your clothes dry as well, then you can string them up inside the tent. So that's pretty cool. As with most tents, there's an attachment at the top as well, so you can put your torch onto that. I typically put my headlamp onto this at night, and then I've got light inside the tent. So one of the things that's really irritating about these inside flaps is that there's nowhere to attach them, so they just drape down onto the floor. It would be nice if you could roll them up and attach them like you can with the outside flaps, but there are no facilities for that. So what I do typically is I roll them up a bit and then stuff them back behind like that there. Now obviously that's not exactly how it's supposed to be, and I wish there was a neater way of doing this. That works, but it's kind of niggling. I think that just a little bit of effort and this problem could be solved in a much neater way. Putting the tent down actually takes longer than putting it up. So you've got to budget a couple more minutes for putting the tent down. That's largely because you've got to fold the tent up and then roll it up a bit to put it in the bag. And it's quite a heavy piece of canvas, so that does take a little bit more manpower and takes a couple more minutes than putting the tent up. In summary, this has been a fantastic tent. It has held up really great in all the conditions that we've subjected it to. And that's been in the heat, in the cold, in the wind, in the rain. It's been really fantastic from the northern parts of South Africa where it's nice and tropical, in the northern parts of Namibia and in Botswana and so on, all the way down to the southwestern parts of South Africa where it's typically quite cold and windy on the Atlantic coast. The tent has done really well under desert conditions as well. So it's really been a very good tent. The negatives with the tents are few and far between. They're really more sort of niggling issues than really significant faults in the tent itself. I really can't say anything bad about the tent. There's a couple of things I think that could be improved, like the Velcro at the bottom. I would think that a zip would just be much more practical, and the inside flaps would be nice if they had some clasps on it. But other than those sort of small niggling things, this is a really fantastic tent, and I'm very happy with this purchase. I think this is really good value. If I were to make a recommendation, what would it be? My recommendation would be to buy the tent. It's really great. I think it's great value. I think it's properly set up. I think the quality of the workmanship on the tent's really good. I haven't identified any faults of significance. This is a really great piece of equipment. If you're serious about camping and camping in different weather conditions as well, then a Ripstop canvas type tent is the way to go, I think. It's a little bit heavier. It's bulkier than a poly tent, does take up a bit more space in the vehicle when you're traveling up and down, but for the benefits of it, it's definitely worth those minor costs. This is the Travel Gigolo. If you like this review episode, then please hit the like button, subscribe, and smash the bell so you get notifications of future episodes.